Hello, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a guide for Consecrated Strikes, Seal of Righteous. So you're going to be playing a PvE focused damage dealer. We're a hybrid class, so we're going to be wanting spell power weapons, strength weapons. We'll break that down a little bit later. Our primary stat is going to be strength. We'll be looking for critical strike, intelligence, attack power, and spell power. To boost our damage. And then our main abilities, the main skills we're going to be using is going to be Judgment of Wise or Judgement of the Wisdom, Hammer of the Righteous, Exorcism, followed up by Hammer of Wrath. And we're going to work to get that to a 6-second rotation, so that we're casting those 4 skills over and over again every 4 seconds. Every 6 seconds. And we scale really well off base stats and then off attack power. So things like True Shot Aura, things like Arcane Brilliance, Mark of the Wild, Kings, those are all going to be buffs that we can bring. So the more buffs that we can bring, the better our damage is going to do, and then we're going to be helping our allies. So our class is we're a good candidate for a character that can bring in a lot of utility and a lot of buffs. Curse Element would be really good. That's going to boost our damage. That's going to boost everybody in the party's damage. For mobility, we like Blink, we like Charge. These are going to be things that we're going to be able to use. They'll actually boost our damage if we use them correctly. So we have a boss with a knockback. We can charge right back to the boss, get right back in. We are melee, so we need to get right back on the boss, get some damage done. For defensives, we like Divine Shield. Bark Skin would be great. A kick or like Counterspell would be really good. We're going to want threat drops. We'll get Fade in the starting area. It's just about mandatory. We're going to do good enough damage on this ability. If we don't have Fade, we're going to wind up like there's times where you may just not do damage. Like I can think in lower Blackrock Spires on the spiders, when you kill the big spiders and a bunch of small spiders spawn, the damage will be so high that you'll proc Fade. As soon as the Fade's gone, you're going to be right back up to pulling aggro. So without Fade, you're going to really be gimping your damage. And then if you could get Feign Death, then that's awesome too. Shamanistic Rage is very strong for generating mana. We're going to couple that with our Judgement of Wisdom. We certainly want to take Judgment of Wisdom. Don't take Judgment of Light. We'll use Judgment of Wisdom in conjunction with Shamanistic Rage. We're going to generate a lot of mana that way. For additional damaging abilities, we're going to have things like Flametounge Weapon. We won't need to do any extra cast or anything. It's just going to proc off of our weapon attacks. So Flametounge Weapon, the Consecrated will pick up. Holy Wrath, both those are holy damage abilities, so they're natural fit. They're great for AoE. We won't use them all the time, but they're going to hit hard. Those will be great for AoE situations. And then after that, Hand of Reckoning and Holy Nova, I'm going to show you 2 different ways to build this. Either way you take, it's not going to change your primary rotation, right? You're not going to have to do Hand of Reckoning is off the GCD, and so on top of that, we're going to use Holy Nova. We can use it with Pious Strikes, so an Epic RE, and it'll auto cast when we cast Hammer of the Righteous. So that's going to be really good, and that'll generate some additional damage for us. So jumping into talents, we've got if we go to the Retribution Paladin tree, we're going to take Improved Judgments to get the cooldown. We're shooting for a 6-second judgment. So we'll take 3 of 3 here, and that'll leave us with 7. The other 2 we'll get from the other 1-second reduction we'll get from 2 REs that I'll show you when we get to RE section. Heart of the Crusader, very strong. It's mandatory, 3 points. It's gonna give us some additional crit, but the main thing is it's gonna splash our judgment to adjacent enemies. And with Seal of Righteous, we're really focusing single target. This is a way for us to take that really hard hitting single target ability and splash it to everything around it. So now we have this like single target nuke that's gonna splash out and damage everything around it. So that's gonna be really good. We'll take 3 of 3 there. We're gonna want 5 of 5 conviction. That's gonna give us crit. The capstone's what we really want. 30% of our strength becoming critical strike rating. That's absolutely huge. We'll want Sanctity of Battle, and we want Sanctity of Battle so that if we've used an Exorcism, it'll empower our Hammer of Wrath. And with the empowered Hammer of Wrath, when we cast, the opponent doesn't have to be in execution range. So regardless of what the health pool of the boss, we just start fighting the dragon, whatever it is, we'll be able to cast Hammer Wrath. And Hammer Wrath is going to be our #1 damaging ability. So this is going to be mandatory. 3 of 3 Sanctity of Battle. Crusade's awesome. I would say it's one of the highest throughput damage abilities. Once you get through with the mechanical points that we need to actually make the ability this build work, then Crusade's going to be very high on that priority. And I'll touch on it just a little bit more when we get to the Discipline Priest tree, because we have some very similar talents there. Vengeance, you're going to want 3 of 3. With 3 out of 3, you're going to wind up getting like 15% increased overall damage, and that's huge. We'll want Art of War. Art of War is going to make our exorcisms instant cast, and so if it's mandatory, if we don't take this, there's no point in reducing the cooldown of Judgment, because we're going to have to do a full cast on our exorcism, and that's going to push the whole rotation out. So this is going to allow us to get some instant cast exorcisms, weave it into our rotation. Judgment of the Wise, I can't seem to play without at least 1 point here, and occasionally I will go up to 3. If I know there's a mana burn phase or something, even with Shamanistic Rage, and I think I have very strong mana regen, I'll go up to even 3 here. But you'll at least want 1 of 1, unless you have something really unusual going on and you don't need mana. But for myself personally, the replenishment is great for me in the party. I'll take 1 of 1. Now, Fanaticism is a way to boost. You're going to get a lot of crit for your Hammer of the Righteous, or your Judgment of the Righteous. It's going to generate a lot of crit, and with Righteous Vengeance here in the tree just below it, it's going to give, with Righteous Vengeance, you'll get 45% of your crit value. Like when you hit, instead of doing double damage, you'll get an extra bonus 45% damage ticked out over 8 seconds. And so that's going to apply to certain abilities, but Judgment of the Righteous is one of them. So Fanaticism boosting your crit rating up here is going to be a very strong damage increase. So you'll want 3 out of 3 Fanaticism. Sanctified Wrath is mandatory. You'll want 2 of 2. That's going to reduce the cooldown of your exorcism, and it's great that it's got the critical strike rating for Hammer of Wrath, but what you're really after is the reduced cooldown on exorcism. That keeps us a clean 6-second rotation. After that, we can jump into the protection tree. We're going to want 3 out of 3 Divine Strength. 6% strength is really nice, but it's getting 6% of your strength as hit rating. It's going to give us so much flexibility later on. We're not going to have to be stalking and hunting down hit gear to the detriment of our build, right? So we can take the most premium, most optimal pieces of gear. We can have more flexibility with flasks, foods, if we take Divine Strength. And then in the Holy Paladin tree, what we're going to want to take is we're going to want to take Judgment of the Pure. Okay, and we're going to take 3 out of 3 there. And the haste is okay, but we're really here to buff the damage of our judgment spells. And that's what we're going to use that for. After that, we can jump into the Shaman tree. We want to go to the Enhancement tree. What we're going to be after here is Mental Quickness. It's really strong. Our build is going to scale very well. We'll get into it when we talk about attack power and spell power coefficients. But all of our abilities are going to scale, and especially Seal of Righteous is going to scale very well with attack power and with spell power. And so by taking Mental Quickness here, we'll wind up with 20%. When we get 5 of 5, we'll have 20% of our attack power turned into spell power. That's doubled of our primary stat strength, so that's 40. We've got 3 REs with Mental Quickness, and so all summed in total, we'll be at about 52% of our attack power becoming spell power. And so that's going to make something like Hammer of Wrath that scales well off both hit very hard, and same thing with Seal of Righteous. Also, for the way that we're playing Seal of Righteous, we're going to want Mental Dexterity. Okay, I don't know that the Seal of Command guys always want Mental Dexterity or not. I don't know how much they value intellect, but for Seal of Righteous, you're going to take 3 of 3 Mental Dexterity, and you'll see that value start peeking through when we break down like one of the REs here in a little bit, and we'll do stat priorities, and you'll see just how valuable intellect already is, and this is just going to make it more valuable. Into the Discipline Priest tree, we're going to take Twin Disciplines. It's really strong. This is a place where let's say for whatever reason I had talents that I chose not to take anymore. I didn't think they were that strong. This is my next highest throughput for the time being. Okay, so we're going to talk about random enchants. We're going to want Consecrated Strike, Legendary Enchantment. That's going to make it so that we get while we have the temporary buff, Consecrated Strength. We're going to get that from using certain paladin abilities. We're going to get 10% increased strength. We're also going to get 30% of our strength as flat spell damage. Our allies that are standing in that consecrated ground are going to get 5% increased strength, and it'll also give us a weapon enchant. We're not going to take advantage of the weapon enchant because Flametounge is going to wind up giving us more damage, and so we'll take Flametounge, and they won't stack. But that's fine. That's Consecrated Strike. That'll be our legendary. The epics is going to be, we're going to have alternatives that we can use, but either way, we're going to want Baleful Hammer. Baleful Hammer is going to cause your Hammer of Righteous to make the enemies receive 5% increased holy damage, so that's going to be a big buff to us. There was Faithful Flex, and there are some other REs that will, when you do non-periodic damage, that will of a different school, they'll allow you to do more holy damage. I haven't been able to find a way to make that work. Faithful Flex used to work with Heroic Strike, and so people would macro that into their ability, but that's been hotfixed. It doesn't work, and if you do that today, you're actually reducing your damage. Help get the word out on that. I see a lot of people hurting their damage by using Heroic Strike. So I like to take, I'll say I like to take Bountiful Gifts, and then so a complement to Bountiful Gifts is Fist of Reckoning, right? I'll break down how good Bountiful Gifts is in just a minute, but it causes your Gift of the Wild to be quadrupled, and so it winds up with you wind up with a lot of armor, a lot of resistance, and a lot of primary stats, and our build scales very well off primary stats, so there's a big damage boost. Fist of Reckoning converts Hand of Reckoning into a damage dealing ability that does not have a taunt. Now, Fist of Reckoning is off the GCD, it doesn't generate a cooldown, and so it can be macroed into your ability. I'll leave a link in the description, or in the description. I'll leave a copy of the macro that I'm currently running. So you can just put that into your macro. It won't affect any of the 4 abilities you're using, and you'll just get extra flat damage. Now, I would recommend setting this up on preset 1 if you're able to pull all 3 spells, right? If you get Holy Nova and Gift of the Wild, and you get Fist of Reckoning, you could have 2 presets that look like this. Now, Pious Strikes and Holy Retribution together are really strong by itself. Pious Strikes is the ability that the RE that causes Holy Nova to be proc from your Hammer of the Righteous. By itself, it's not going to do much damage. When you add Holy Retribution, it's going to do a good amount of damage. As a matter of fact, I do probably 20% more damage AoE, like in an AoE situation. I'll probably do 20% more damage if I have the Holy Retribution and Pious Strikes over Bountiful Gifts and Fist of the Reckoning. In single target, it's almost the same. The damage I get from either setup on a single target fight is almost identical. Okay, and the Holy Nova is less mana intensive because it's auto casts. Whereas with Fist of Reckoning, I'm actually having to spend the mana to cast it. You're not spending mana when you use Pious Strikes. Okay, and then Bountiful Gifts is also going to require more mana. So it is a more mana-intensive way to go. And the damage is virtually the same single target. And it's better in AoE if you go with Holy Retribution. I like to rock it because I enjoy having the additional armor, the additional resistances, the additional life pool. We'll break down how good it is here in just a minute. So Mental Quickness I already touched on. We're going to take these 3 REs. That's going to wind up pushing us up to like 52% of our attack power becoming spell power. And that's going to allow our really hard-hitting abilities that scale off both attack and spell power. It's going to allow them to double dip. It's going to be very strong. Holy Power is going to give us 2% Holy Crit. I really like Holy Power. Strongly recommend it. Sparing No Rods. Sparing No Rods is something I didn't use. I was using Fanaticism. Eventually, I realized that it was not affecting my Heart of the Crusade for some reason. Heart of the Crusade is supposed to proc off modifiers to your judgments, but it doesn't off the Fanaticism RE unless I had a bug or something. So I've broken down the numbers today. Now I'm saying Spare No Rods it's the best you can get. Seals of Pure also very strong. Whether you're playing Seal of Command or you're playing Seal of Righteousness, this is probably what you want to go with. It's very good. Crusade is also strong, 2% global holy damage. It's going to get strong. The higher your crit values, we'll talk about this later too, but the higher your crit values go, the more valuable Crusade is. Right now, that's what I'm using. On my alt that has a lot worse gear, okay, item level 70 character, just mostly dungeon stuff. So she's rocking precision because 2% spell and hit rating it's really good when you need it, right? And sometimes you can't just magically pull hit out of the thin air, right? And so being able to throw it on an RE, have an RE that you can swap out, like if I'm below, if like with my combat buffs and everything, I'm still not at hit cap, then I'm losing more than 2% damage. So Crusade would get swapped for something like Precision. You could go Weapon Expertise. I don't like it, and we'll get into that later when we do stat priorities, but that's an option, okay? And then there's the 2 hasty adjustments we talked about that you're going to have to get yourself to a 6-second rotation. So those are the picks that I would have, and like I say, I would swap. And later we're going to talk about AQ40, and I'll show you where you can some of the fights where you could kind of rotate between the different specializations. All right, so I hinted at it a few times. So how good is Bountiful Gifts? Well, just on the face value of it, it's 40 all stats. You know, it's 632 armor. It's 56 all resistance. This is kind of the way if I'm comparing gear sets, like I compared the Wrath set to the Judgment set. This is kind of what I would do. I would take my primary stats and I would break them down into what they like into secondary stats of what they actually give me. And so here you can see a breakdown of what I get. If we sum them all together, you know, it's a really high amount of damage, or a lot of benefit that we're getting here. Okay, a lot of attack power, a lot of spell power. But I want to help you guys visualize it. So if you take it all together, like with a spell crit, you're getting the equivalent of a Moonkin form, or like a Moonkin ore, right? At about 3%. You're getting around 1.5 Berserker stances. You're getting close to 1.5 Rockbitter weapons worth of attack power. You're getting spell power equivalent to 2 Briarwood Reeds. Okay. For health, you're getting the equivalent of about 4 of the major health enchantments on your chest. For mana, you're getting the equivalent of 5 major mana enchants on your chest. For armor, it's the equivalent of around 10 superior defense enchantments on your cloak. And then when we just talk about raw resistance, we're looking at the equivalent of 11 chromatic mantles of the dawn, the shoulder enchantment from the Argent Dawn. And like 12 flat spell damage would be close to half the value of a Rockbiter weapon enchant, aside from the proc, right? So very strong. Okay, next I want to talk about stat priorities. Main stat you want to look for is strength. Then after that, you want to be soft capped on hit. And that's going to be different for everybody. And part of it's going to depend on how good your gear is, how much strength you have. That divine strength we talked about just briefly, just a minute ago, like it's giving you a lot of hit. And so like when my procs are going off, I call this the casino of builds or DPS builds, because we've got, you know, Crusade. You can have Crusade 2 on a separate weapon and it'll proc. And you got Crusader Strength, or I'm sorry, Consecrated Strength from our legendary RE, given 10% increased strength. When I get all that going off, I can hit over 1,000 strength, and with Divine Strength, that's 6% hit, 6% chance to hit. Like I go out of combat, I go from under hit cap to around 11% hit. And so you really just need to be soft cap. And you're going to have to test that. You're going to have to see what your combat bonuses are. I think last time I did a really long test, I was getting somewhere around 0.5% chance to miss on some of my abilities. And those are just because I wind up with small windows where, let's say I'm moving and I won't have my Consecrated Strength buff on the ground. I'm out of there. I just wind up with very rarely with small windows to miss. For myself personally, to invest to get to hit cap. And by the way, we only need, as paladins, we're only going to need 8%. There's only going to be a handful of abilities beyond that, like Holy Nova and Flametounge weapon, that are going to go off spell hit. And so we only need to hit 8%. For me to try to hit 8%, though, let's say I'm at like 6.5 or 7, to try to go change my gear to get to that, I don't feel like there's value. And that's kind of the way I'm approaching expertise, and we'll talk about that when we get there. So after we get this off capped on hit, everybody will have to kind of hit the target. I mean, sort that from themselves. But once we get there, critical strikes to next. Now I say critical strikes to next most valuable, but there's several kinds of crit. So when I say crit's the most valuable, I'm saying global crit, which is like crit rating on your gear, or a global effect that would cause you to just have more crit. So you have crit rating there. Then there's like spell crit, melee crit, school crit. When I say school crit, that would be something like your Crusader in the Retribution tree, where it's 1% holy and physical damage. And so it increases that school of damage's chance, or like twin disciplines in the discipline tree for priests. So it's going to increase your holy damage's chance to hit. And then after that, you got, Sanctity of Battle or like Fanaticism. It's going to affect one spell. All right. That's not going to be as strong. Well, it can, like Fanaticism, that gives you a ton of crit for your seal, right? For your Seal of Righteous. But that's not going to be as strong. It's just global crit. There's several kinds. We wind up with all of these different types, right? We wind up with pieces that have raw crit. We wind up with spell crit. It being different than our melee crit. We have certain schools. So like Flametounge doesn't. Flametounge will get more or less crit. When you look at your damage profile after you do a test, you're going to notice that you crit less with Flametounge. Well, that's because your other spells are holy and they're getting that bonus, right? From Twin Disciplines or Crusader. And like I said, and then the ability to Fanaticism and Sanctity of Battle and things. It's going to be different. It's going to make it a little bit of a pain to compare. But you kind of want to have a rough idea of where your melee and your spell crit are hitting or falling. With crit, one thing to know, and I'm going to try to use an analogy. I'm going to try to make this easier to understand. I don't want this to be overwhelming, but I do want to touch on it because it's important when it comes to gearing. And by the time we get through next, it's definitely going to be relevant. This is the value that you would get from 1% crit, starting at you had 0, right? And this assumes the 0.45. That assumes that it's got Righteous Vengeance. It's one of the abilities that can proc Righteous Vengeance. So let's say like it's Hammer of Wrath. Your first point of crit is going to be worth 1.45% of your overall damage, okay? But you can see by the time you get to 99, your last point, you're only like right at 0.6, right? You've lost a ton of the value in crit. And I think I can explain it well. So what I would say is, let's say I'm a contractor and I have a building site with all these rocks. I got rocks all over the building site, okay? And I tell you, hey, I'm going to pay you $100 per rock that you move. There's 10,000 rocks out there. I'll give you $100 for every rock you move. You go out there and you're excited. You can't wait. You move that first rock and get $100. You're tickled to death. But by the time you get to the last rock, you're liable to tell me to go move my own rock. Tell me to go pound sand. You say, hey, I'm a millionaire, buddy. You go move your own rocks. Okay, that $100 doesn't mean hardly anything to you by the point that you get to where you're down to your last one, right? Now, what if my competitor, like Holy Power Contractors is across the street and he's got a lot full of rocks, and he says, hey, buddy, I'll give you 1% of your net value or your net worth for every one rock you move. And you say, I'm a millionaire. That's $10,000 a rock. Yeah, I'm in. This is where Holy Power, when we get really high values of crit, this is where Holy Power will start to beat something like Crusade or Twin Disciplines. And that's something we need to be looking down the road at. It's just getting raw global percent increases eventually will be better. Even on gearing and stuff, sometimes we have procs on items. Sometimes those are going to wind up being better because they're just going to give us a flat ability that can be scaled up. Okay. But eventually, yeah, raw global damage increases will eventually beat crit. But it's going to take a long time. We're not there yet. All right, now I want to cover attack and spell power coefficients. And there again, you don't have to know all this, but I couldn't include it. I did my first video. I wasn't prepared to do it. I hadn't done all the testing, and I didn't know if it was the same as it was in Wrath, and a few things are different. But this also explains why I'm going Seal of Righteous versus Seal of Command. If you see Judgment of the Righteous, okay, attack power coefficient 20, spell power coefficient 32. And what that means is for 100 attack power, I'm getting 20 flat damage. For 100 spell power, I'm getting 32 flat spell power. So you can see where mental quickness that takes my attack power and turns it into spell power for something like Judgment of the Righteous is really good. And same thing like Hammer of Wrath, it's 20 and 20. And so it double dips as well. And that's what you're going to see on your damage profile. The higher these coefficients are, and when they're affected by both, and most of our paladin abilities are, like, that's going to push our damage up. Now go to Judgment of Command. You're looking at like 12 and a half, I think, and 13. It just, even if it's hitting better today, and yeah, I know there's scenarios where in AoE it's hitting 3 targets, okay, like, it may be doing about the same as us today. It's not going to last. By the time you won't go through next and have Judgment of Righteous not beating Judgment of Command, unless it's a very, like, it's going to be very nuanced. It's going to have to be a strong AoE situation. But with Heart of the Crusade and us hitting so hard with our judgments, like, Judgment of Command can only win if it's like 3 or 4 targets. But if like 15 targets come in, like, it's going to Judgment of Righteous. But this is just a breakdown. You don't have to stress over it too much. But I want people to know and be aware and kind of understand. You know, when you see the percent, that's what it means. It means 100 attack power. That's how much flat damage it's going to give. And this is going to help us to understand, like, we'll use Hammer of Wrath as an example with 20 and 20 when we go to break down Rockbitter weapon. All right, I want to talk about haste. So I don't rate haste very high, and here's why. When you start out with 0 haste, we're going to have a 4 spell rotation. All that haste is going to do at this point is increase our melee weapon swings, but not by much. But based on per percent, it's just not going to do much. And what's going to happen is, in between 0 haste and 25% haste, we're not going to be able to cast an additional spell in our 6 seconds. We want to get off our Judgment. We want to get off our Hammer of Righteous. It's important for us to get those off every 6 seconds. If we push out, then we're probably taking a damage loss, right? So we actually got to get all the way to 25% 25% haste before we have enough haste to actually squeeze in that 5th spell, where we can get 5 spells per 6 seconds. In order to hit 25% haste, we're going to have to sacrifice a lot of primary damage abilities. We're going to have to unspec talents that are really strong. On top of that, you're going to wind up having problems with mana and trying to sustain your mana. I've tried this with Holy Shock. I've tried it with Crusader Strike. I've not been able to make this be a positive damage outcome at all. I've always lost damage pushing to 25% haste to get off 5 abilities. And I wanted to cover it and try to explain it. Now, following that up, I rated about the same as I do expertise. I want to touch on this. So there's something a lot of people don't know. It's like seals and judgments, exorcism, Hammer of Wrath, Heart of the Crusade, Consecrated Ground, and Holy Nova. Like, they can't be dodged or parried. None of our abilities can be parried if we attack from behind, so we will, right? So parry's out the window. The only thing we have to do is worry about dodge. I really recommend before you go and like, for example, I used to use Flask of Adept Striking, and I couldn't use Flask of the Executioner because I was using Flask of Adept Striking in order to get the expertise. And once I realized that only a handful of my abilities can even be dodged, and I went to the target dummy, I started looking and trying to be aware and see how often I got dodged, I realized it was very much. And on a long test, I realized I'm only using a tiny fraction of, part of a percent in dodges. However, I can really, really boost my damage up by taking this flask, this crit flask, and get a bunch of extra crit and do a lot more damage. So for me, I just live with it. I'm not a tank. It's okay if I miss occasionally. I just live with it. I know my hardest hitting abilities aren't even going to miss. Okay, or I should say, or be dodged. And so I roll with it. You're free to do it however you want. There's the RE you can take for additional expertise if you want it. Everybody's going to have to make that decision themselves. I'm just sharing the way that I do it, and I think that I come out, money, like, I think I'm taking that to the bank. Certainly with my flask selection, right? And also for gear selection. Now, AQ40 is going to have more expertise on gear. It's going to be a lot easier to get it. But yeah, I don't stress, and as a result, I don't value it. I just put it above stamina and spirit. And After Stamina and Spirit, I'd say like Armor and Resistances. They're stats that I really like, but you know, I don't go hunting for them. So next after that, I want to talk about Mana Sustain and how I do it. I use Shamanistic Rage. I card Shamanistic Rage. I got lucky. I'm pretty new. One of my early prestiges, I got offered Shamanistic Rage, and I said, I'll try it. You know, I'm having mana problems, so I'll try it. And, you know, you can see the profile here I put up in one of my tests from the target dummy. I get way more mana from Shamanistic Rage than I do from my Judgment of the Wise and Judgment of Wisdom. Almost half my mana comes back from Shamanistic Rage. So we'll use Judgment of Wisdom. That's what we're going to take in the starting area. That's going to give us some passive mana. And Shamanistic Rage. Beyond that, I like to have Dark Runes, and I like to have mana potions, because if I get to a position where I don't have mana to cast, say, a Judgment of Wisdom, my auto attacks aren't getting me my mana returned, and then I just kind of get locked out. Or you can run out of mana. Let's say you cast Exorcism, and that's going to empower your Holy or your Hammer of Wrath to go on, you know, to be cast at any health pool. Let's say you run out of mana, and then that buff falls off, and now when you do get enough mana regen, you can't cast, so it can break your rotation. I like to have it as a backup. If I know I'm going into a fight, like say Mana Burn phase on Ragnaros or something, I'll just spec 3 of 3 Judgment of the Wise. That's what I do. And that coupled with Shamanistic Rage, that'll keep me topped up. Most of the time, it's rare that I need to do that, though. Now, sometimes in Mythics will kill stuff so fast. It's just a regular Mythic 0 or whatever. I'll kill mobs so fast, and we're running from pack to pack. I don't get the advantage of standing there and attacking with Shamanistic Rage. So, like on the target dummy or on a raid boss, I'm not going to run out of mana. Actually, I'm prone to more on trash in a dungeon scenario. All right, we'll talk about gear real quick. I made a spreadsheet. I won't get into it too much. I think maybe there's something with Scylla Command that I don't understand, and Wrath was better, but I ran the numbers. I know for me, Judgment came out better. I had a higher mana pool. I had a close to 1% spell crit more, and if you were taking mental dexterity, and that might be the crutch of the whole thing, is right. So the way I've been building here for Seal Righteous, I'm taking mental dexterity, so that intellect on that set was becoming attack power. I was walking with mental dexterity, the attack power was close to the same. I was getting about an extra 100 spell power and 1% crit, spell crit, and then I was getting the higher mana pool. So I thought Judgment, at least for Scylla Righteous, Judgment set was much better. But there's a new kid in town, right? And that is the Avengers set. And this is what you want. The 3-piece is going to give you 8% of your strength to stack with the 30% we already get from our talents conviction. So this will give us 8% of our strength as critical strike, spell critical strike rating. And then 12% of your intellect is going to become melee crit. Now, melee crit is going to affect Hammer of Wrath and Hammer of the Righteous, and so and your auto attacks. So that's really, really good. The 5-piece bonus, I don't have it yet. For just judging, comparing to people I've done like world bosses and stuff with, it looks like it's pulling in about 4.5%, sometimes maybe even 5% damage of their overall damage. So that's a strong bonus. It's nice. There's 5-piece set. Like the chest has way more crit than the Judgment set piece does. The greaves, the boots, they're gonna have more crit than the Judgment boots. Well, I don't think the Judgment boots, I don't know about Wrath. I know the Judgment boots don't have any crit, and the Avengers greaves do. So that's strong. That's what we're going to be looking for. After that, I just want to, so we'll break into gearing with just a quick comparison. I want to show you how item level's not king. This is 2 separate cloaks from the same instant. The Cloak of Draconic Might drops off trash. Cloak of Firemaw is going to drop off of a boss. They're both item level 70 from the same instant. And so you would think that, hey, the same item level, same instance, you would think, well, they must be similar, stats. And 50 attack power up front sounds nice, but you gotta understand that this agility, this 16 agility, is going to give me 16 attack power, plus it's going to give me crit, and the 16 strength is going to give me crit, and it's going to give me hit, and it's going to give me flat spell power because of the way we're building our build, right? And then it's also that 16 is getting doubled, so that's 32. That's 32 attack power plus 16 attack power. That's 48. You know, offensively speaking, you're losing 2 attack power, but then you're still keeping the flat spell damage, the crit, the hit rating. So Cloak of Draconic Might really wins, and this is what, you know, gearing can be hard. We've got to learn to break down, kind of like the way we did with Gifts of the Wild or Bountiful Gifts. We've got to be able to break this down into secondary stats and really compare them to make sure that we're getting the best piece. And it's tough because you'll be comparing stuff out of Mythic. They say, oh, well, Chromatic Sword beats Chromatically Tempered Sword off Chromagus and Blackwing Lair is always going to beat this other sword. Well, it's not always going to beat the other sword. If you pull it from a M20 chest or M25 chest, even though the stats aren't perfectly, you know, maybe it's not the perfect stats, like all of a sudden the flat damage on this weapon is so good that it just can't be beat. And so comparing weapons is going to be tough. I'll show this is just a random mix of rings that I like. Okay, so I really like Malfurion Signet. I really like Trinity Force Ring. I'm currently wearing Ember Fury Talisman, and I'm not the only guy, right? You get it in Mythic, and then it's really good. It's got the strength. It's got hit, crit. You can't. I mean, the stats are so good. It's hard to find a replacement. There is the Amulet of Shifting Sands, the BOE. It's a little bit better, but if you can get this in a higher Mythic key, it's going to be better than. So there again, it's that back and forth. Malfurion Signet Rings Request from Nightmare Dragons. You get the Nightmare Engulfed Object. You can pick that up. It's really nice with strength and crit. Similar to the Signet of Unyielding Strength, which is strength and crit. And that's, hey, I mean, I guess if I could have that on all my pieces, that would be really good. I don't know what I'd do for mana, but I'd be pulling lots of damage. Here's a list of trinkets, and I just, in no particular order, it's not, by any means, it's all inclusive. I just want to show you 2 that you get from Lower Blackrock Spires, because I think Heart of Wormthalac, I'm still using mine. It's so good because of the crit and the proc. And like my proc right now, it doesn't give me the value stated here. I think it's saying 120 to 180, but I'm getting closer to 400 because it scales up. So I'm getting close to 400. It's pulling a half to 1% of my damage in single target. I included Smolder Web's Eye because guess what? You're going to kill her on your way to Wormthalac, and you might be able to snag it. It's not bad. It's a pretty okay trinket. If you need hit, Neltharion's Tear or Drakefang Talisman is going to be pretty good. Scroll of Blind Light's great. It's got a holy based AoE proc on it. When you use it, I've had it crit for around 8k. That's a lot of damage. Eye of Moan I really like. I think it's a really good one. Jom Gabar, I haven't got it yet. Haven't picked it up. I'm including the Spell Power Amulet from AQ40 as well. But only to show you that, like, with Mental Quickness, Jom Gabar, so it's giving you 70 and then 70 additional every 2 seconds. The spell power gives you 35, so right at half of what the attack power is. With Mental Quickness, you're getting 35 attack power from the 70 attack power. So Jom Gabar is actually worth, especially considering most of our abilities scale the same off of attack power and spell power, or pretty damn close. It's like getting 3 of the fetishes. So Jom Gabar, really good. It's going to stack with Shamanistic Rage. The timing should be right to get you, I think Shamanistic Rage is up for 15 seconds, and this lasts 20 seconds. So it should boost your mana regen. It's really, really good. It's a very good trinket. I really want to get my hands on it. You might find something like the Sand Polished Hammer versus this Caster Mace, right? And you're going to need to know, like, you're going to have to compare when you have weapons drop. And it's going to be tough. People want you to roll on stuff. Say, hey, you got 15 seconds to roll or whatever. I'll use these 2 for the example, though. You got Edge of Chaos, right? And Loch Ilramar, or I think, I can never say this right. So the Hand of Nefarian Mace. Now, everybody thinks that the axe is better. I thought the mace was better. I think in one of my videos I said that the mace was better. Come to find, I did all the numbers, crunched it. Because of really it only lost because it's got such slow attack speed, right? And that's going to be affected. that's gonna affect how your attack power scales, right? But it winds up being like somewhere between, depending, it winds up being somewhere between 15 to like 5 DPS difference, because it's got intellect, which is going to give it some crit. It's got the spell power, which is going to buff Seal of the Righteous. It's going to buff your seals, your judgments. Hammer of the Righteous gives 3 times flat weapon damage, right? So a slower, high damage weapon is going to make Hammer of the Righteous hit a lot harder, and that's how it wins. But it, depending on your gear setup, it's anywhere from, like I said, it's from 20 to 5 DPS difference. And if you're pulling 4K, 3.5K, it's a drop. It's literally a drop in the bucket. Availability wise, it's probably been a lot easier to get the mace, but I will admit I was wrong. But they're close, and because we're hybrid and we scale off so many different things. We scale off weapon damage. We scale up primarily off attack power and spell power. Really, the world becomes our oyster, and we'll see that when we hit the AQ40 enchants. Any of these weapons here actually were as good as the Claw of the Black Drake. It not only was it a high damage weapon, but it also had crit and strength. Okay, and so this was the weapon. I don't care if you're playing Seal of Command or you're playing Seal of Righteous. This was the weapon from Blackwing Laird that you really wanted. Very, very strong. Oh, now we're moving into AQ40, so we've got a lot of abilities. The Blessed Warhammer is one that I would call out, and I would say I'm not going to use that. And Scepter of the False Prophet is I'm kind of on the fence. There's no crit here, right? I guess you're getting close to 1% crit from the intellect. So, but the speed is too fast for your main hand, right? It's a main hand. So really, though, I like Sithlet, the Sharpened Sithlet Femur. It's going to be similar to the Reaper and the War Axe. I think for the offhand, I've called out this dagger, the Poji, Blessed Kuraji Poji. I think it's Poji. I'm probably saying that wrong. But I like that. I like it for Shamanistic Rage to get additional mana. 1.4 attack speed's really good. And then also to get additional Crusader procs. So that's my attack power, or that's my offhand sorted. And then main hand, I want Sithlet Femur, or I want the War Axe. I like the Claw as well. I like the Reaper. We can. There's like six of the 8 weapons up here would be good, really good for us. Okay, they got crit, they got attack power, or they got spell power and crit. Unlike the Mace off Nefarian, the Sharpened Sithlet Femur is a slow attack weapon, with the 1.6 attack speed, and so that's its salvation. It's really good. And it's got some intellect too, right? So a little bonus crit on top of the 14 that's normally carried. I won this in heroic, and I wasn't looted it. The guy was playing Seal of Command, so I just kind of want to set my heart on maybe like the Claw or the War Axe, and then I don't have to like justify to people why I want it. We could look like ninja looters here, by the way, too. So many weapons are so good for us that you're gonna wind up having people think that you're just trying to roll for everything. And what they may not understand is like, hey, this is a hybrid build that scales really well off a lot of different stats, and if we built it correctly, most of these weapons could be an upgrade for us. But I really like the dagger. So the Larvae of the Great Worm is going to be really good for a range weapon. It's going to give you attack power and crit. You can throw a crit scope on that bad boy, and you'll be good to go. Also, this Royal Scepter offhand, you do not roll this as need, and if you can get it off spec or nobody wants it, I don't think it's a bad idea to go ahead and get it. If you remember the analogy from the diminishing returns with crit, where percent damage winds up becoming better, offhands give us 6%. Now, some of our abilities are tagged melee, and so every time I've tested an offhand, it's always been to a DPS loss. But there's something that I've noticed, and that is that every test that I do as my gear gets better is that the offhand's becoming less and less of a difference. Like, over time, the offhand is becoming more and more valuable. I guess that's based on the diminishing returns I explained. That explains it, right? So, like, getting that offhand with just the percent increased damage as I'm getting more attack power, more spell power, more crit is becoming more valuable. But we're not there yet. But that's something that I've noticed. So if you have the chance to just stash one away, just, hey, maybe you're in a heroic or something and nobody needs it. You got 2 healers and they both have it. You get a chance to grab it, just throw it in the bank, because for this offhand, the stats are really nice. All right, we're going to break down enchantments now, guys. So I'll just go around the world, start with my head. So helm, it's going to be the same as the pants. I want Falcon's Call. It's going to be 10 strength, 24 attack power, and I think 10 stamina. Some bonus stamina too, right? So I like bonus stamina. I'm not going to go out of my way for stamina, but if I get it as a bonus, I'll take it. So Falcon's Call for sure there. Your shoulders, Signet of Might, going to give you 30 attack power. That's what you want on your shoulders. For chest, Crit Gambison, or you can get stats if you can't afford the Crit Gambison or they're sold out, whatever. You're going to prefer the crit, but stats will work. Okay, then bracers, you want strength, you want Crusader in your main and your secondary weapon enchant, and if you can get Crusader 1 and Crusader 2, or Crusader 2 and Crusader 3 if you're rich, then you can go that route. They're 2 separate procs. They're considered 2 different buffs, and they will stack. So I highly recommend that you do that. That's how I'm able to break 1,000 strength when all my procs are going off, is because you can have 100 from Crusader 1 and like 125 from Crusader 2. Then, like I said before, when we're talking about the AQ gun, it's crit scope is what you're going to want to enchant. Boots, I like movement speed. Pants, I want Falcon's Call. Gloves, I want strength. Belt, I want strength belt buckle. And then cloak, I want agility. There's not a lot for cloaks that are like high risk or high like master crafted stuff. I save that money. I put that money on my Crit Gambison. All right, so we're going to jump into AQ40. I want to kind of give a quick breakdown of the bosses. So you've got Prophet Sakaram. I recommend that you go with, I'm going to say, like, Mythic Preset 1 is going to be your Fist of Reckoning with Bountiful Gifts. So when we have that, we're going to do about the same single target, and we're going to get a lot of bonus defenses, okay? So Prophet Sakaram, do yourself a favor before you start the fight. You're going to unspec Heart of the Crusade. Drop that into Twin Disciplines. That'll keep your damage kind of high up there. You'll be really single target focused. You won't be cleaving down and destroying or like splashing damage to your mind control buddies, and so you'll just be guilt-free wailing on the boss, and that's gonna feel good, right? Like we have the advantage here against Seal of Command players. If they try to use their seal, they're gonna really be dishing some damage to their allies. So that's an advantage for us. That's how I would play that one. Next is gonna be Battle Guard Sartura. You're gonna want the single target, so spec 1. You're going to be glad you got the extra armor. Every once in a while, you're going to take a tornado to the face. That's going to be nice. This is really a single target focused fight, and so we should have an advantage. There's not really any enemies to cleave, so an advantage here over command, and we're going to want, like I say, we'll be using preset 1 with Fist of Reckoning. Then moving forward, we got Bug Family. Bug Family is going to be about a toss-up. I don't think there's really much opportunity to cleave 2 bosses. You're usually going to have them one spread away from one another. I'm going to recommend again that you go with the preset 1, and part of that, the nature resist is going to be nice for the poisons, okay, and then the extra armor too, in case you take a charge, get a knockback. That won't be bad. So Vasidius, still command players will have an advantage here. But they have an advantage because they get to cleave multiple oozes. By the time the oozes are close enough to cleave, though, it's not value to the party. By the time they're close enough, you really want a character that can do high single target. At that point, you don't get credit for having an ooze at half-life whenever he reassembles. You got to kill them all. I think you get like 5% of his life pool is deleted for every ooze that's killed. So they start out so far spread out, you can't cleave. When they get to the center and you can cleave, it's not doing anything for the actual mechanics of the fight. If you and your buddy are neck and neck, you got it on farm, you're not worried about it, you know you're going to clear it. I mean, you can cheat. You can cheat and go with Spec 2. Have the Holy Nova with the Pious Strikes. You will get more damage on this fight. And I don't think that he dishes out enough nature damage for it to be like that big a deal. Fenris the Unyielding. This is going to be a fight. You're going to use Spec 2. You want Pious Strikes and Holy Nova if you have it. And don't stress it. I mean, this is like how to play optimally if you have it. If you don't have it, that's fine. So we'll break down the fight just a little bit because there's a few caveats or a few things that I think our build handles well in this fight. Swap the Holy Nova if you got it. We're going to be attacking the boss, and we're going to be trying to cleave down Sons of Fenris. They're these worms that are going to show up, usually about 3 at a time. You're going to be cleaving the worms down. Occasionally, you're going to get teleported to the corner of the room, and you're going to get rooted in place, and a bunch of beetles are going to spawn around you and start charging to the center of the arena. Don't attack the beetles. If you have Blink for mobility, blink out, and you can break the roots. And then, like, if you have a charge, that'll get you about halfway. Then you can charge to the boss. Maybe you got to run just a little bit, and you're right back on the boss doing damage. Because we're cleaving down worms and it can be a hectic fight, if you have a Son of Fenris that is aggroed on you, when you get teleported, he will start moving across the arena towards you, which is also away from the tank. If he enrages while he's moving towards you, he can just about one-shot you. So, good chance to use our defensives here. Fade or Feign Death to drop aggro would be good. Divine Shield would be great. So, those are some of the things that you can do. Pop a bark skin, like I said, use your mobility, try to get back to the boss as fast as you can, but definitely use as much AoE as you can on the fight, because the Sons of Fenris are like irrelevant until they enrage and they start clearing people out. So bring as much AoE as you can. Still, the command players have an advantage on this fight for sure. All right, Princess Huron. This is my favorite fight. I do better on this fight compared to my peers. No matter how I'm doing, like on the previous bosses where I am, I will certainly move up a few points when we get to this fight. I don't know exactly why. I'm going to say use preset 1. The nature resistance is going to be awesome to have for one thing on this fight. And then it's mostly a single target fight. If you're being situationally aware, if you're watching when the beetles, occasionally a pack of beetles get spawned in and they'll start charging in towards the boss. If you can charge out and drop a Consecrate, maybe a Holy Wrath, hit once or twice with a Judgment, like the pack's going to get deleted and you'll be right back on the boss. But there's not much AoE, so I say that we have the advantage for sure on this one. And certainly if you can, take Bountiful Gifts and Fist of Reckoning. Alright, Oro, same thing. It's going to be a single target fight. He's going to burrow. He's going to jump up. He's holding your best trinket. He's got Jom Gabar. So wail on him like you know, like as hard as you possibly can. Make sure your group gets this boss down. You want that trinket. And then roll high. Roll high on the trinket, right? But seriously, like it'll be a single target fight, and then occasionally he's going to spawn crystals. You're going to use your mobility to get there as best you can. Players like hunters are going to have an advantage. Ranged characters are going to have an advantage. They just have a lot less moving to do, and then swap targets, and they can get more damage off on the crystals. That's fine. That's fine. But but definitely we have an advantage over Silk Command players on this one. All right, Twin Emperors, again, it's going to be the single target spec. We have an advantage as Still Righteous. And when I say we have an advantage, what I'm talking about is two comparably geared players, right? Similar amount of gear, similar skill level. I think Still Righteous has an advantage. You're not going to be cleaving on Twin Emperors. If you can cleave if you're cleaving and getting 2 bosses at a time, then you're probably not going to kill the bosses. Hey, you've got problems, right? They should be getting tanked like on opposite ends of the arena. And so there's just not going to be the opportunity to cleave here. So hanging in there, doing as much single target as you possibly can. That's the way to play it. Same thing. Okay, so Cthulhu, he's the last boss. He's got your chest. It's got an insane amount of crit. So just like an Oro, you're gonna wail on him, beat the chest out of him. Okay. He's got tentacles on the inside. He's got tentacles on the outside. He spawns eye stalks with laser beams. Everything about this fight is pretty much single target. Now, range characters have a massive advantage on this fight because when he spawns an arena full of eye stalks that are all spread out, they can target one down. They don't have to move very much, depending on what their range is. They don't have to move nearly as much as we will. We'll have to move completely from one eye stalk or tentacle all the way to the next, right? Whereas a range character may only have to move a small fraction of that to be within range of both the eye stalks that popped up. So range is going to have an advantage, but single target is big here. And so I think that, you know, you go spec 1, you're gonna cleave down every eye stalk, every tentacle as much as you possibly can. We have an advantage over Steel Command, I feel like, in this fight. And there you go. We'll get him down. We'll get our chest. We'll get the rest of our pieces. We'll get geared up. We'll be ready for Nax. I just explained real quick, guys. Like, I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to tell new players or people that are trying to spec out, if they get beat by somebody that's playing Steel Command on Finkris, or they're not doing as good, say, on Cthulhu, and they got a hunter that's just really, really beating them on the meters. I don't want people to get discouraged. You know, it's a give and a take, and every fight has its different mechanics. But I want people to, it's not because the guide's bad or that your build's broken and you need to reroll because you didn't get Moonkin for them. That's not the case. It's just that every fight's different, and I want people to be aware of that. All right, so consumables, I like the volcanic stew. I think it's volcanic stew. It's a pure strength food. I like Blessed Sun Fruits. If you can get Exalted with Argent Dawn, I actually did enough. I was trying to get my Light Forge set, and I did so many Scoldomances and Stratholmes that I got Exalted. So I can buy the Sun Fruit, and this is a flex. I'm just kidding. But it's cheap. This is like my low effort food, right? So if I'm doing like the daily mythic or something, I feel better knowing that I mean, it's almost free. They're so cheap, and I'm gonna get 10 strength. But for like progression rating or like doing hard content, first week stuff comes out, or you're doing a hard mythic, grab some scrolls. I highly recommend to get scrolls. We scale so well off so many stats. Like, I don't care. Even the agility scroll's not bad. It's giving you melee crit. It's giving you armor. It's giving you attack power. Just find the ones that are cheap. We scale so well off base stats, right? You can get the mid-level ones, and you get a decent little boost, right? And sometimes you can buy these for like next to nothing, especially like the mid-tier ones, right? And it's like, it's not required to bring. I like to throw them in my bag. I like to have some scrolls, right? Carry some health pots, carry some mana pot. We talked about this before. Dark runes and mana pots. If you run completely out, the well is dry. It must be reprimed, right? And the longer you go without getting your mana back up and getting back into your rotation, you can brick some of your procs. You could lose that Art of War proc, and then you got a long cast, or you can lose that instant cast, or you can lose your Hammer Wrath that goes at any life pool. I don't think this is the right icon. I'm using Flask. I think this is the Flask of Adept Striking, but I'm using Flask of the Executioner now, and I really like it. If you needed the expertise, you could always go with Flask of Adept Striking, and I'm going to let everybody pick how much expertise they need. You guys hit the target dummy. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. I like Flask of the Executioner a lot better. We got all these buffs. We want to buff our party members. Load your bags up with the regents. It sucks, and it's going to sometimes run you but we should do it, right? It's a huge buff for the party, and you don't want to be out of regent and the only guy that has, say, like Mark of the Wild or Arcane Brilliance, and trying to buff everybody manually. So bring your regents. Dragon Breath Chili, I'm just throwing this out there, is just an oddball, but it will buff your damage, and you can take it. This is if you want to be the min-max guy, right? You can get like the Dog Whistle out of Scarlet Monastery for an extra like 5 DPS or something. You can eat this Dragon Breath Chili to get you an extra 15 DPS. There's just ways to min-max. You can get it, be an engineer and throw dynamite, but that's not required. And I think I'm going to cover that here shortly. It's about not stressing. that this is something I really want to cover. Moonkin form and Berserker stance. I know a lot of people that want to just re-roll their build. I was really agitated that I had to re-roll my build that had Moonkin form on it because I had Scylla Command. I couldn't get Scylla Righteous. I'd rolled it away because every guy that I was following was telling me go Scylla Command. At the end of the day, you got to know this. So Boomkin form right off the bat. Boomkin form, if I didn't take Boomkin form, I get a free talent point, and that can easily go into like Crusade or Twin Discipline, which is 1% crit, 1% holy damage, right? So that's only a difference of it's a difference of 2 crit, but I get 1 global damage, and so depending on what my crit level is, it might be 1% damage. But the other thing is that's going to free up a legendary card, and I can get sprint now, right? Or pain suppression, or whatever other legendary I want. And so it's not zero sum. There is some opportunity cost to getting these stances and getting Boomkin form or battle stance. My battle stance is going to type a blue card. I got to take more damage if I get it. It's like 5% more damage taken. I'm only getting 3% melee crit. I could get a Magma Totem instead, maybe, right? With that blue card. So they're good, but I would never recommend to a person that they re-roll just to get it, just to get one of these stances. They're not bad. But you have alternative options, and it's not like either I get 3% extra crit, melee, or spell, or I get nothing. Because instead you get, like for Moonkin, it's the extra card or the extra legendary and the talent point. So it's not, it's not all or nothing. All right, Rockbitter, Flametounge. I'm trying to speed this up just a little bit. But Rockbitter or Flametounge, I get asked this all the time. So now that we have the spell power and attack power coefficients, we can go back and look. Let's use Hammer of Wrath as an example. It's 20% coefficient on spell and attack. So if I've got Rockbitter, I get 100 attack power, and then with my mental quickness, I get 50 spell power. So 20% of 100 attack power is going to be 20, and then 20% of the spell power is going to be 10. All right, so that's 30 flat damage from Rockbitter on Holy Wrath or Hammer of Wrath. Now Flametounge's give me a flat 25, so that's 5 damage difference. Okay, so 5 damage difference, but Flametounge is going to give me a proc. It's going to be like, it's going to scale off my spell power, and it's going to be affected by my spell crit, and it's going to be wind up being like 7% of my overall damage. And so definitely Flametounge is the winner. Now my alt has Rockbitter, and that's fine. If you don't get Flametounge, you take and you get offered Rockbitter, you take it. And at the end of the day, you're doing like maybe 5% less damage, but that's not the end of the world. You take what you can get. But I will say, some people actually I know that have people have asked me, they have Flametounge and they have Rockbitter, and they want to put one on one weapon and one on the other. And I got to tell you, don't do that. Enhancement Shamans used to do that. It was because Rockbitter was better for Rockbitter would have been their preferred enchantment, but their Lava Lash and some of their other stuff preferred them to have at least one weapon with, like their offhand, their Lava Lash weapon, to have Flametounge on it. And so they would do it. They would mix it, and that was the best for them. But we're not. We're Paladins. We're Strike players. We got to go with the best of the two. I like to use this example. So if you put out your virtual hands, we're going to put out some cryptocurrency, right? You got digital hands out, we'll put out digital currency, right? So you got 2 hands, we're going to put in a cryptocurrency in either of those hands, right? You can have 2. So what are you going to do? You're going to put like a Bitcoin in one and a Dogecoin in the other? No, you're going to put Bitcoin in both. And so in this example, Flametounge is your Bitcoin. It's better. It's a lot better. And you'll want it. It's because it's better. You want it in both hand slots. All right, this is, I may have covered this. I think I covered it earlier, and then I have this in my overlay while we're doing the testing on the dummy. I want people, this is I have 50% of people, when I'm in a raid or doing world bosses, people that beat me in damage, and this is embarrassing, but people that are beating me in damage, I get beat by somebody playing Constructs. I really want to see like what their spell lineup is, right? Are they using do they have a legendary neck, or they, are they using like a Mana Fiend pet, or what are they doing? They got Thunder Fury, I gotta know. Like, I'm just curious because I want to improve too, right? But even people that are beating me in damage, and I'm embarrassed. Like, I'll look and they'll have heroic strike, right? But this was based because Faithful Flex already used to give you like 2% increased holy damage every time you used a physical ability, and it would stack up 5 times, be 10% increased holy damage. That's twice as good as Baleful Hammer, which is what we're using now. But they hotfixed that. They hotfixed it and it doesn't work anymore. And so now if you use Heroic Strike, it's just going to replace your auto attack, and it can't proc a seal. And our seals hit for a lot. So it's going to be a damage reduction. It's going to be a damage loss. So get the word out. I don't know how to tell people well without sounding like rude. And people don't want to hear it. You can imagine if you're at raid night, right? And you're doing your raid, and especially if you're beaten. Like, what if this guy's beating me, right? And now the guy that's doing less damage than me is whispering me, saying like, "What's he gonna say? Hey, I can help you do more damage." Like, whatever, pal. You know, people don't want to hear it. So I'd love to find like a good way to get the word out, and this video is part of that, right? So if you guys are watching, you don't have to tell nobody if you were doing it. I was doing it. I think I got offered, I don't know if it was True Shadow or something. I was offered like a good card, and Heroic Strike was the worst card that I could get rid of, right? And so I got rid of Heroic Strike. I was like, fine, I'll get rid of Heroic Strike. I'll get it back. It's common. I'll get it back because I need it, right? Because this guide said I needed it. Well, I noticed my damage was a lot higher. And I'm testing. I can't figure it out. And then finally it dawned on me that Heroic Strike is actually replacing my auto attack and cannot proc a seal. So help get the word out on that, guys. Okay, guys, so I don't have any flashy graphics or anything for this. I just want to be kind of a one-on-one talk, and I just want people to not stress too much. You know, I know people that will re-roll their build because they didn't get something like Moonkin form, or they didn't get Berserker stance or something. We've already covered that a little bit. I would just say, you know, this build is not meant to be played perfectly. You don't have to have 100%. I re-rolled this character from Seals of Command. I had a character that had just about everything I'd want on it, and I started over. And I don't have Moonkin form. There's a lot of abilities I don't have. I've never seen Arcane Power. So there's a lot of things I don't have. You know, I could have picked up a Blade Flurry. I don't know if I would have taken it, but there's a lot of things that I had on the other character. I had Curse of Elements on the other character. I had Blessing of Sanctuary with Kings. The character was exactly the way I would have wanted it, and I didn't have it on this when I re-rolled, when I prestiged and started playing Seal of Righteous. But even with that, like, I was doing more damage with Seal of Righteousness by a noticeable amount, to the point that I never went back and played my Seal of Command character, even though it had almost everything that I would want. This build is strong. You don't have to have everything perfect. Give yourself that flexibility and you know, if you don't have everything, then that's something that you can be striving for. You know, there's some games that they'll actually put artificial constraints on the characters so that you can't ever get to the very highest level, or like even in World of Warcraft, you know, they'll constantly come out with new patches to keep pushing the goalpost out so that we keep engaged and we keep playing. So it can be fun. It can be fun to constantly be trying to make a better character. But I know some people don't, or maybe they're new, they don't have gold. I would say, you know, I was gold capped in Cataclysm when I played. I hit gold cap. You know, I started in Wrath, and then in Cataclysm I hit gold cap. But I would say that Ascension has a really different economy, and so it's, everybody will tell you it's easy to make gold, but I don't believe it. I mean, I can make gold now, but it's not easy. So if you don't have the gold, that's one reason. If you look at the enchantment section that I put out, I'm not telling guys to go out there. I'm not telling you exactly what to put, because if you put 7 strength instead of 9 strength, it's not gonna make or break this build. And as far as rolling, like getting good cards, like you want some, yeah. And like I say, I'll be the first one to tell you, Flametongue weapon's really, really good. But like my alt, she's got Rockbitter. She didn't get Flametongue, and she does fine. She's rated Summon Heroic AQ40. She's got an item level of 70. I think they wanted a 3K minimum test on the target dummy. I think she was pulling like 3.5, and the only enchantment she has is on her weapons. And so this build is going to carry. You need to hit about 70% of what we've shared here today, right? And the big part, 50% of that, is going to be specking the right talents. And that's free. You don't have to roll. It's not RNG. Follow the talents that I've showed here in the guide. Beyond that, you want to know your stat priority, and you do now. You want to have the right rotation. You don't want to have heroic strike in your build. Those are all mistakes that you're avoiding right now, right? And so if you can just hit 70%, you're going to be good enough to go in and easily be able to go in and raid AQ40. And because we scale so well with gear, it won't be long before you have stepped your gear up. You know, you've improved your gear, and you're going to see massive payouts. Our abilities scale so well that we get more improvement from new gear, right? And so, unlike maybe another build, you're going to see that as your gear improves, your performance improves a lot. So just don't stress, right? And the other thing is REs. REs is going to be like 10, 15, 20% of the build, and you should have them. If somebody's price gouging them, hit me up in game. We'll make sure you get them, right? There's no reason for paying 50, 100 gold for REs. But you can for sure, it's not RNG, you can for sure get these REs. Okay, a lot of our abilities that we need, we only have a few that are mandatory, right? And a lot of them we get right there in the starting zone. You know, we get a mobility, we get a threat drop, we get our seal, and we get our Judgement of Wisdom right there. Okay, then we're going to card our Hammer Righteous. We'll get into that in the carding section, right? But yeah, you're going to have 50, almost just automatically be able to hit 50% of this build. You take it to the next level by getting to item level 70. Do the Mythic Prison spam, you know, and you're going to be hunting Light Forge pieces. You want an Ember Fury Talisman for your neck. It's pretty good likelihood that you'll get it. It's like, I think maybe the only strength neck. You'll be adding that to your collection, right? You might get lucky and get Heart of Wormthalack. I'm still wearing mine. I have other trinkets, and I have combinations to buy other trinkets, but I really like that trinket. You know, so just gearing up to an item level 70, and having your REs, having the talents like I've showed here. A lot of the stuff I told you to get's buffs. I strongly recommend getting buffs. But the thing is, you go to raid, hey, somebody else may bring those buffs. So, like I say, just don't stress. If you don't have the money, you know, I left it very vague on the enchantments. I didn't specifically say get the, you know, most epic belt buckle, or the most epic crit gambeson, or the epic scope, or whatever like that. So you can get the green ones, right? And if you can't afford the crit gambeson, go stats. You know, go 7 strength instead of 9 strength. It's not gonna make or break the build. Okay, guys. So our starting 4 cards that we're gonna go for, we're gonna obviously Seal of Righteous. That's our big boy there. And that's going to allow us to then roll Judgement of Wisdom. We're going to keep Judgement of Wisdom forever. That's our mana regen, and it's going to be our heavy damage dealer. So we'll have those two. Then I'm going to recommend, or not recommend, I'm going to say it's mandatory to get Fade. You're just not going to want to play this build, dealing the amount of damage you're going to deal without a threat drop. And this is a way to guarantee it. You don't have to card Feign Death or anything like that. So Fade, then don't macro it into your abilities unless you just have to. You feel like you have to. You're gonna, when you start pulling a lot of high threat, it's gonna be nice to not use it. You know, the tank's gonna have certain taunts and abilities, maybe a Mocking Blow. You're just not gonna need Fade all the time. You're gonna get a lot more mileage out of the threat drop if you micromanage it. So we got a 1-button macro, guys, and so we can do that. You don't have to, but I strongly recommend. But I will say Fade's mandatory for the build. Charge isn't mandatory, but I really like it. It's a strong mobility. If you don't want to get it though, I recommend that you go with Heart of the Wild or Mark of the Wild. Okay. I didn't cover it earlier, but while you're leveling, when you're looking for your cards, I would recommend that you try to pick up Battle Shout. Don't get Blessing of Might. If you get Blessing of Might, you won't be able to use Blessing of Kings. Blessing of Kings is 5% strength. It's also 5% agility. It's 5% all stats, right? So it's going to be a lot stronger than Blessing of Might. And you can get just as good as Blessing of Might by taking the Battle Shout. So those are the starting cards knocked out. Now let's get into what we card. Now there's two ways to card. You can card risky, or you can card safe. And if I want to card safe, what I would do is, for me personally, and I have Shamanistic Rage as a card. You may not have that. But if I was going safe, it'd be, for me, Shamanistic Rage. Okay, then I'd want my Hammer the Righteous. And then after that, I would want to take Exorcism, and I'd want to take Hammer Wrath. Then a couple of my starting zone, I'm guaranteed to have this build mechanically playable when I get to max level. Now, if I want to card risky, and you can, and that's what I normally do. If you've already played for a while and you got Marks of Ascension, you know that you're going to be able to have quite a few rolls when you get to max level if you like your prestige and what you're looking at. So maybe you snagged a couple of things that you really wanted. Maybe you got the Moonkin form, or maybe you got True Shot Aura, and you also got Flametounge weapon enchant, right? So I'll play risky. What I'm going to do when I go risky is it's going to be Shamanistic Rage, because I love Shamanistic Rage. I don't want to play without it. Shamanistic Rage, Hammer the Righteous, then I'm going to take Aspect of the Beast, and I'm going to take Flametongue Weapon. Now, I have been debating taking Power Infusion. I think Power Infusion is really strong. I've never once been able to roll Power Infusion, ever. I've never seen it. Not on my alt, not on my main. I don't know how many prestiges on that, but I've never seen it. I've thought about maybe, I have seen Aspect of the Beast quite a bit, though, even if I haven't carded it. So I've been wondering if maybe taking Power Infusion. I'm sorry, I always say Power Infusion when I mean to say Arcane Power. I apologize. But I've been thinking about carding Arcane Power instead of Aspect of the Beast, and then just hope that I get Aspect of the Beast. But that's what I would do if I was going risky. Now, even though I call it risky, it's not like crazy. And crazy would be to not take Hammer of the Righteous. Hammer of the Righteous you won't see till level 60. If you don't get it at level 60, it's a rare card. And so you could really easily wind up finding yourself in a situation where you can't play the build at all. If you don't have Hammer of the Righteous, functionally the build's not going to work. Our legendary RE is not going to be able to be procced. It's what we're using. And so, yeah, you definitely want to card Hammer of the Righteous if at all possible. But that would be my risky take. I appreciate you guys' time tuning in. I've put a lot of work into this. I don't know I would just shout out to the guys that watch my other videos. This is my very first video, and I want to help people understand Consecrated Strikes. I've refined my approach just a little bit. I'm doing stuff just a little bit better than I did in the first video, but I've been really working on trying to get the production value of these videos up. And I do appreciate you guys tuning in. I have missed a bunch of rating and a bunch of playing. I've been logging into Photoshop and logging into like trying to film editing software and stuff, trying to get this YouTube video out. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up here, and I'm gonna go try to hit me some AQ40, try to get that Jom Gabar. You guys have a good one.